I love that question. So often people ask me on interviews about happiness and do I believe happiness is a choice and can we be happy all the time? And I make a clear distinction between happiness and joy. To me,
Yes.
happy, you
Yay.
too? Okay, cool. Happiness to me is this kind of like fantasy world where it's always unicorns and butterflies and rainbows all the time. And that's not like, life and being a human being in this world.
Good morning, happy Wednesday, everyone. Today we are going to discuss a little bit about finding your joy and how to kind of like recognize that you're disconnected from it. We'd like to kind of play with too a little bit of understanding opportunities. Oh, she's here. Let me grab her for us.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
Good, so good to see you.
So good to see you too. How is Florida?
Oh my God, I was talk about finding my joy. We got there and I just got outside in the sunshine. It was like soak into my bones. It was great.
Oh, nice, nice. How long were you guys there? Just for a week?
Yeah, for a week. Perfect.
Nice.
Yep.
Very
Just enough
cool.
to get enough sun that we went home and we weren't too crispy.
Right? You have a big, huge launch upcoming. You are doing a live event. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. This morning we were texting back and forth and yeah, so
Exactly.
it's coming up quick. New Mind Live is coming to Burlington, Vermont, which I'm super excited about because Burlington is an awesome city. I love
Very
Burlington. Yeah, natural and beautiful. So anyway, we're going to be there. We're going to be there doing New Mind Live and teaching people how to be the sought after experts in their niche. It's perfect for coaches and healers and people like that who want to make a bigger impact in people's lives.
Oh, how fun. So are you
It's going to
actually
be so good.
speaking at this event? Are you speaking at the event or are you just going to it?
No, Brian and I are putting it on. It's our event.
Oh my gosh, that's even cooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize that. No wonder you guys are all about it.
Yeah. The ticket deadline for early birds closes on April 1st. No joke. So.
Yeah, exactly. No joke. That's the deadline. How cool. I'm excited for you both.
Yeah,
She
thanks.
for everyone who doesn't know, you work with your husband. You guys have she does some solo work, but she also works with her husband, and they have an amazing, collaborative relationship. It's so exciting to watch, and they do an amazing performance on stage together about
Thank
helping
you.
you kind of tap into your, connection. How would you describe it better? Because I'm floundering because I experienced it and I loved it, but my takeaways were different than I think what everyone else was.
Yeah, we're body mind experts, so we help people to align their mindset with the success that's already within them. But the thing that usually stops people isn't their thinking, because everybody's talking about that. It's your body.
Right.
So we talk about how what's actually driving your behavior is your sensations and teach people how to come from a sensation base that allows success into their lives. So super, super exciting information that's pretty new out there right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You and I both have always been a big believer of body, that full embodied
Yes.
wisdom, just, thinking things through. And I've done amplified field work. I'm actually starting up a new group of doing amplified field work where
Cool.
we get together and actually mirror each other. And so it's really, like you said, learning that instinctual reaction is more what we make up our belief systems out of. So really becoming hyper aware of that pattern. Totally agree. And recognizing how the mind works in it, like how the brain contributes.
Yes, this is, I think, the next wave of what's coming in personal development, because we've been through this period of time over the past 10 years where people really are becoming aware of the emotions. But next, what's coming is really the understanding of how the body mind works. I know it. So I think it's a super exciting time for us to explore.
I agree. I've actually been studying like crazy the amygdala and the cortex and all the brain science behind it and how, it's just fascinating. I actually am super excited to share that as well. So I know exactly what you're speaking about and what you're
Cool.
excited and why it motivates you. I do
Yeah.
agree. It's kind of like the next level of awareness, body memory and body instincts. And I'm excited to hear. I want to hear all about
Yeah.
your event. I'm
Cool.
excited about
Cool.
that.
Thank
Too.
you.
Yeah. So today we decided we would talk more about our joy, which kind of is in alignment with what exactly we were talking about. So it's kind of fun to actually smear into that. But I do think that a lot of people don't have a true understanding of what joy is. How would you define joy?
I love that question. So often people ask me on interviews about happiness and do I believe happiness is a choice and can we be happy all the time? And I make a clear distinction between happiness and joy. To me,
Yes.
you
Yay.
too? Okay, cool. Happiness to me is this this kind of like fantasy world where it's always unicorns and butterflies and rainbows all the time. And that's not like, life and being a human being in this world. So to me, joy is about being able to embrace all of life with gratitude and the knowledge that there's always a positive and negative way to look at things, that nothing is inherently good, bad, right, wrong, or positive and negative. Yeah. And there's the ability to connect deeply in any moment. And for me, that's joy. So I'm excited to hear what you think about it.
Oh, so I look at joy as outside of us and happiness, or I'm sorry, joy is inside of us. Excuse me. I don't know what's wrong with my brain right now. I truly believe we connect to our joy. Happiness lives outside of us. And that's why I agree with you. It's very, very fairy. It's like kind of illusional versus, or even delusional.
Delusional.
Sometimes we make it up and it ain't existing. But, I really think there's a lot to be said about how we associate to happiness. I think that we recognize happiness and we think it brings us joy. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I don't know why my Wi-Fi didn't work today. So I really think there's a truth between understanding the difference between those. I think we experience happiness to connect to that inner joy. Yeah. And so I think if you recognize if you can't maintain happiness, it's unrealistic. And I think that's why I agree with you 100%. It becomes a fantasy because you're always chasing this idea of what happiness looks like. And it's elusive. It's kind of always changing.
Totally.
Totally. For me, joy is like, you can touch that like that. What brings you joy, what makes you happy, or what connects to that joyful sense of your expression. It's all inside of you. It's your responsibility to connect to that. So I agree. I would say it's very, very similar in the way we express it. I just think it's more, not that it's different the way you're expressing it, but I find connection to it in those two different ways.
Yep. So I love how you're describing that. Absolutely. And I think joy has a different flavor for people. So, in my book, Find Your Soul's Agenda, I talk about how everybody kind of has a unique energy flavor to them. And, some people are like, joy has more of like this outward expression kind of thing. And some people, joy is very like meditative and silent. And I think everybody kind of has this way that they generally experience joy in their lives. And I think understanding that about oneself is super amazingly valuable to be able to tap into it, right?
Yeah, I think even just not only experiencing it, but expressing it. We all do it differently. And I think that's a very important element to connection, to recognize, it goes right back into the whole 5 love languages, the way you gift and share your joy and the way you express it and how you receive it. It's all fluid and different. And so I think that when you recognize what brings you joy, you can find joy even in darkness. I know it sounds really kind of scary and kind of weird, but you can have a sad, mournful moment and be filled with gratitude about, gosh, I'm so grateful this happened because I learned so much about my abilities to, maybe to love if you've loved and lost, the depths of that. And, just even finding passion, right? Wouldn't you think that sometimes finding what you don't want helps you find out what you do want?
So right on, sister. I remember for myself, a number of years ago, I swore I did not have passion. I didn't know what made me passionate. I didn't understand passion. And finally, some astute person said to me, well, what pisses you off? And I lit into like a tangent about, well, this and that. And they're like, oh, you don't have any passion, huh? I was like, wow, I always thought it meant just being like, yay, I'm passionate about something. And boy, that moment really, really turned things around for me. You know, I did my graduate research when I was in occupational therapy school on the people who were suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease. You know what that is, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
It's terrible, progressive disability in the body, but the brain is right on and functioning. And so like scary stuff. So I was interviewing families and patients who were dying of Lou Gehrig's disease to find out if they could still make meaning in the face of progressive illness. And this is, I think, you know, touching on what we were talking about darkness, because what I found in my research was every single time patients and family members found profound meaning in the face of death and progressive disability, they just got so much more connected to what really mattered for them, which was really like relationships, you know? And and they were able to find sincere joy and presence with each other, even in the face of that terrible disease. So, you know, it's the paradox of life, that sometimes that's what it takes for us to really get in touch.
That's got to be a powerful thing, because, you know, I think of that disease as like being buried alive in your body.
Totally.
I hate to say, sound morbid, but you're literally hyper functioning, and yet your abilities to, so to find joy in that is probably the ultimate experience, I would think. You know, just being able to tap into that.
It was profound to speak with these families over the course of months and to see the light that was brought forth because of being in those positions. I mean, time and time again, it wasn't like one person. It was really awesome.
Yeah, you know, I always feel like survivors, I don't even know if I really want to say this, people who experience extreme emotional, physical trauma become it's a choice, right? You either become completely invested in the darkness and the lack and the story of defeating and you know, not finding connection, to a clarity, a gift that comes from it. And it doesn't even have to be excessive trauma. You know, I've had clients over the years that, you know, they just had a breakup and they weren't even emotionally invested, but because they were abandoned, it tripped up something profound in their life, and they're all of a sudden doing things different. And I mean, I really think that the whole point to darkness is to see the light, to recognize what's possible for you. So it is interesting, in something as traumatic as that, it can be that hope can still exist. And I don't know if you have this belief around the word hope. I don't know. I think I've talked to you about this before. The surrender and the hope. I feel like we have those terms kind of skewed. There's two different sides to hope. There's this, you know, unbelievable potential of something possible. Yes, but I also think in a lot of people use it in denial of what is. So I almost feel like hope's become a bad word, where we stop growing because we're thinking it's in the future, and we start looking at what's going on now, right? I don't like what's happening now, so I'm just going to hope something's going to happen differently. You just do a mantra on that, you know? And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think that's what God meant about free will and hope and potential. Right?
So, that's a great point.
You know, I feel like we have that kind of skewed. I mean, I think we should be hopeful. To me, hopeful is, you know, desiring something different, but being fully intentional that it's you involved, that you have to bring promise. It's kind of like that whole idea of dreaming and creating a possibility for yourself. I think that gives us connection. The other one I feel like is a mess. But then when you look at surrender, or you know, like the white flag concept, people are like, oh, I don't surrender, I'm a fighter, you know,
right?
Like, this is a great thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all resistance. That's awesome that you're full of resistance, you know. We don't really live to that potential, right? I mean, we deny this really cool, uncomfortable experience and don't literally go, okay, wait a minute, if I surrender to this, I actually might gain more in wisdom or experience or emotion by allowing the experience to happen instead of pushing against it.
Yes.
So those two are very abused terms. I think their intention behind the definition is really beautiful, but I think in our society, we kind of mold things in a way to keep us in that negative state. I don't know if you study the brain. Have you studied anything on the brain?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you know, just like I know, that this is actually a natural survival behavior to do these things. Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of, I'm doing a huge study right now on anxiety and depression. I've been taking classes over at Harvard. I really love this expression of learning about, you know, how the brain behaves with anxiety and where it goes in the brain, where the amygdala does, and all these. Anyway, I won't bore you with the details. But it really is kind of a fun world when you start to realize the whole reason we do it is for survival. It's that whole need to not necessarily, you know, like I love the example of, you know, you're walking around in the woods and you're like hunting, like a hunter and gatherer, and you need food to survive. You know that that's your focus. But as you're hunting and gathering, all of a sudden like a log falls down and knocks you out unconscious. It's survival to recognize that as you're walking around, to become aware of your environment. And I think a lot of the times we don't invest in becoming aware of the environment. We feel victimized by the environment. Do you know what I'm saying?
I totally do. My mind went off on a little tangent because one of my favorite things to talk about is how in our society, we're still operating from these brain functions that are primal. And yet, you know, as we're talking about hunting and gathering, what we need in our society, number one is air, number two is water, and number three is money, so we can buy food. And we wonder why we're all screwed up in the head around money. Well, I mean, from a survival standpoint, so much primal stuff comes up around that. So like, let's have a lot of grace there. But these things are operating in our life. This is the mechanics and the functions of who we are that are driving our behavior.
But we can't deny them. They're there for a reason. They're there to, if we can embrace and surrender to the behavior. Yes, integrated. Very good word. Our lives become more fruitful instead of trying to fight against it and go, oh, you know, that didn't work, or I don't, you know. The traditional fight or flight mechanism, which is the amygdala kicking into high gear, going, I'm anxious about that, or I don't want this, or I don't want that. It's amazing how self-sabotage does take over. And we start living out what we fear because we're so focused on what we don't want instead of focusing on what we do want. That's where I go with the whole hope thing, is we're, you know, hoping for something better, but we're doing the same behavior over and over again, thinking something's going to be different.
Yeah, which doesn't work.
Right?
Yeah, and so I love what you're saying about not resisting and integrating these aspects of ourselves, because, you know, I could get on this soapbox all day about how important it is to be where we are in our bodies, feeling whatever we're feeling at the moment. That's what gives us the open door to experiencing more of whatever it is that we want in life. You know, often clients will actually come to me and say, I want more joy. Like that will be their goal. And they're people who are just so disconnected from their bodies.
They don't even know what joy means.
Yeah, no. No. And it's like one of the first things I do with them is I'll ask them, like, tell me what's actually going on in your life and how you actually feel about it. And this is what'll happen. They'll say something like, you know, just as an example, well, you know, I'm in a relationship with my husband who, you know, we've been married for 20 years and it's really not the guy for me, but it's not so bad. And I'm like, back up, tell me about what's really wrong. You know, they're like, no, but I can find gratitude. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about your gratitude. I want to talk about how pissed off you are. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
no, it's okay. And I'm like, okay, feel that. And they're like, that's what's covering up your joy, dude. It's in there. Like, we don't get it in one direction. We don't just get to experience the range of emotion in one direction. It's because we've gone to the depth that we can go to the heights. It's because we've gone to the darkness that we can feel the light. It's because we've been sad, angry, depressed, and pissed or whatever that we can feel the joy.
Yes, you have to have the expansiveness. I talk about the emotional range all the time. I totally agree. We do not experience those stories of lack. We can't understand. It's like being in a white room and expecting to, you know, go out and see and understand something. You can't eventually become numb. You start to not feel anything if you're always in emotion. So we have to have all of them. It's a huge gift. Yeah, it's interesting. I do agree with you. I think a lot of the times we will shelf or minimize the discomfort of some issue and decide to focus on something else and make that the reason we're miserable.
Totally.
And then there's this whole other issue we got to navigate.
Or that big thing.
Yeah, or if we navigate this, that'll get fixed. So and I hate to say fixed, but you know what I mean, it'll work itself out. It is amazing how, you're right, everything is kind of enmeshed and connected in a way that no matter what we do, we shift everything. You know, we can focus on one thing, but I do love when I have clients that are like, I just can't find a great relationship. I'm like, yeah, probably because you don't have a great relationship with yourself. You know, like, let's work on that.
Yeah.
A little self-love here, pour that in.
Yep. I'm good, but I don't want to talk about anything that I'm mad, sad, or whatever about, No, it's fine. It's fine. Really.
So, like, getting back to our topic, you can only connect to joy if you're willing to sit in the discomfort. I've learned to see that the connection to joy is because I was able to experience sadness to connect to my joy. Totally. You don't just wake up one day and go, yeah, that makes me happy. That must be joy. Not necessarily. I love cake, but if I eat it every day, it's not such a joyful experience. It may make me happy in the moment, but tomorrow I'll regret it.
It changes, and we grow, and life grows. I was doing some qigong this morning when I woke up, and I was thinking about how, I don't always feel like doing qigong. It's kind of quiet, for me. I'm more of an energetic person. Usually I need to go run. But I was thinking about how it used to be such a big deal to feel presence in my life. And I used to have to go to kind of great lengths. And there I was just doing a little qigong this morning and feeling like a deep, profound presence, which is joy for me, one of the joys for me. And it has changed in my life because I've gotten better at it, because I've practiced, and it's gotten more subtle and all that stuff. So
I think it gets deeper. I feel like what used to, I feel like that's a reason, like we have moments where we can grace it. So we recognize, oh, what was that? We can slow us down a little bit. But I agree with you. When I meditate, I think I do a lot of yoga. So yoga is my love, my passion. But there's two different kinds of yoga. There's a yoga that's very yin-y, where it's relaxing and melting and very present. There's a very yang-y style where it's very much anaerobic, and I've always found that I need both, which is really fascinating because, most people think of yoga as it is therapy. Yoga is therapy, but they think of it as, doing these crazy twists and making yourself a pretzel, and doing all these really defying gravity modes. But there's so much there, and it doesn't even have to be yoga focused. I mean, it could be just going for a hike, like you said. You may run one day, you may walk one day. It doesn't have to be all, that's your yin and yang of that. You can do any kind of exercise or any kind of movement, but I do believe movement is essential to connecting to your joy. It really is. You can't avoid it.
Totally. I can't call up a research study off the top of my head. If my husband was here, he would, I'm sure. He's the Mr. Research man. But I would put a 20 right now on the fact that there's research out there that is pointing towards the fact that you can't. It's an experience that you're having in your body. Joy is an experience that we have in our body. You have to move.
Yeah, there's that concept of you constantly think of one thing, and you think if you can think of it in different angles and different ways, that eventually have the answer. You get so stuck in that mode that you're not moving. You're not, you're hyper focused in a negative way, unfortunately. But if it's a problem anyway, there's that opportunity that if you get into movement while you're thinking, that you actually come up with a solution faster because you're using your senses, you're using more connection to your abilities, and it is amazing.
You're using your whole mind instead of just a piece of it. It totally makes sense. And actually from a concept of Chinese medicine, just moving the body allows the thinking mind to quiet in a way that the answers come. It's just, it just makes sense. And of course, movement isn't the only way to experience joy, but I love, you pointed towards a video that's posted on your timeline about big rocks and filling up the big rocks. And I think it's difficult for people a lot of times to make decisions to do the things that bring them joy, even if they know what brings them joy. So they're the people who think that they don't know what brings them joy. And I say that because, of course, they do. They just haven't tapped into it or allowed themselves to.
Or they're in guilt.
Totally. All of that stuff covering it up. But then you actually have to make decisions to allow yourself to put those big rocks in there and experience your joy more often.
She's referring to a video that I posted on my timeline. If anybody wants to look at it, it's actually just before this show. It talks a little bit about it's golf balls, and then there's stones and pebbles, and there's sand. He puts in this jar, and he's been asking the kids, "Is this full? Is this full?" And every time the kids, of course, say, "Yes, it's full. It's full with golf balls. It's full with sand." But what he's asking, is there anything more they could put in? And then he finally starts pouring in with this little beer to kind of fill in, to recognize that there's balance. And I think it is essential to recognize proper balance in our life. There is, he was saying the golf balls represented family, and the stones were like, things that are important, like job and career and external. I think of them as layers. And he went into like the sand, it was like all the other stuff, priorities that you want and things you want for yourself. And then the water was the joy of life. So it is important to understand balancing all your priorities and needs or certain elements of your life are important. And when you give too much attention to one of those things, you will feel the disconnect every time.
Your life feels totally full.
Yes. You pour yourself into work, you'll miss out on connection with family. If you pour yourself into just having a good time, you'll miss out on being able to support yourself. There's just so much. The other thing, I don't know if this resonates with you, but I feel like I use this thing with my clients all the time. It's called DOG, duty, obligation, and guilt. A lot of the times we have to go into DOG in order to survive. Work is a place of DOG usually. Certain times when you have to drive your kids to some event that you don't really want to go to, you do because you love them, and that's kind of a DOG experience. But living in DOG really does create a lot of pain and a lot of resistance, because you're always living in that I should be something other than I am.
Yes.
So it creates that internal heat. And so I always ask my clients, when you're experiencing DOG, are you in a surrender of DOG, or are you in resistance of DOG? There are times when we need to behave like that. But to recognize when that pops up is really important, because you build resentments when you don't, and you block your joy.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. That balance is so elusive for people. And I think one of the amazing things about that video is how, like you just said, when he puts the golf balls in, it's full. We feel so full, and yet there's always room for more. And I'm not saying go pack your life full of crap, but to notice that it can be really interesting when our mind is so super polarized, like you were saying on the resentments. We feel so full. There's so much more of life that's there, and it's exhausting. That totally depletes our energy.
Yeah. I do think self-care is something that not many people talk about. I know they talk about it, but I don't think a lot of people really understand it.
I would agree with that.
Doesn't mean you have to, self-care doesn't mean you have to go book a spa day. It doesn't mean you have to go off and meditate and be on a rock by yourself. It's whatever helps you feel balanced and centered with yourself. Somebody might journal, somebody might take a nap. It doesn't really matter what you do to fill yourself up. It's just time to go in and connect. For me, it's connect to God. It's the way I see it. I connect to my soul, and I spend time in meditation, which I really, for me, I stop asking questions and I just listen and hear what's really going on for me and really dial in. It kind of like turns up the volume on what I'm hearing for myself. And that self-care helps me give myself that proper gauge where I don't do things and build resentment stories, or I don't let people control me. And that's, of course, another resentment or another faulty belief. But a lot of us, I think, believe that people control us because I'm so nice. I don't want somebody, they take advantage. You only get taken advantage of when you let people take advantage of you. But there is a lot of, story that goes with it. And when I don't realize unconsciously that story's going, all of a sudden in it. I don't know if you find that you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. I'm a little stressed. Okay, it's time for me to meditate and re-tap in so that I can balance again.
Yeah, so there's those things, right? There's those things that we know we can do to bring in self-care. And I am a total firm believer in that, and having a backpack full of things that you can pull out. And how about self-care as like a frame of reference for life? Like self-care, caring about self, and how we can do that with noticing what words are coming out of our mouth. I mean, I could just stop right there.
Yes,
We,
no doubt. The internal bully.
right?
Holy cow.
Are we
Yeah.
speaking in a way that is caring about ourselves?
Yeah.
One of my favorite things with clients, specifically when we're working on people who are trying to increase their businesses by having different kinds of conversations with people and sales and that S word that a lot of people don't want to talk about, which I believe is really about building relationships. So, we train people to have a different kind of conversation with folks. And one of the first things that we do is just for a few days, have them go out in their world and become aware of the conversations that they're having with others. And this was my experience, and our students tell us all the time that it's very similar for them. I realized I was at the grocery store one day and I saw somebody I hadn't seen in a while. And I said, "Hi, how are you?" And she said, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you?" And then 5 seconds, the conversation was going towards what was wrong in life. I had no idea that was the kind of conversation I was having with almost everybody in my life. It was such an eye-opener. And our students tell us all the time, when they really become aware of what kind of conversations they're having at the grocery store, the post office, or whatever, we're bonding over so often all the crap that's happening in life. And then we go home, we lay in bed at the end of the day, and we wonder why we are not in more joy. We just had how many conversations about crap that's happening.
Validating our lack. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's a great awareness, like the opportunity to recognize unconsciously how you talk.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time in that space. I personally feel like I think it's important for us all to recognize that there's two voices within us, the internal voice and the external voice. You know what I'm talking about. You smile. It's fascinating how one will hijack the other. And no matter how grounded and clear we want to feel and be, that little finger just comes in and just hijacks the show when you're like, wow, where did that come from? I didn't even know I was thinking that. It's fascinating. So I find it very important for us to really sit and pause and go, okay, there's a reason that had to come out. What about me am I in resistance to? Where is that coming from?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times our friends will mirror us down. So thank God they do.
Yeah.
Because I think half the time we would miss out, right? I mean, casual conversations of I didn't even know I was thinking that, right? I mean, we're not paying attention to what's going on in the mind.
Totally.
It's really sad.
Totally. Yeah.
I do. I think it's a practice. I really think it's something that I wish children would learn at a young age. I remember when I was a kid, when you hear yourself talk, it was very shameful and taboo. Was that same for you when you were a kid?
Yeah.
That inner voice was you're talking to yourself, you must be crazy.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to me is I've always had this strong relationship with that voice, really strong. And this is going to sound really strange, because I had shame around that story. I didn't tell people I was talking to myself. I always would say, God's sharing with me. And that's just the way it resonated. And now I really believe that. That is like a voice within me that helps me discern, help me recognize, is this somebody sharing something with me, or am I literally making up a story about it that keeps me stuck?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Were you taught that as a child too, that that inner voice? Something's wrong with that inner voice.
Yeah, you're crazy. And I remember the time that I had learned that there are many voices going on in your head, but it was really probably years until I actually understood that and went, oh, there are many different voices inside of my head. I get to choose. I mean, it was one of those I'm a smart person, but I really did not land on that one. And then it really, I think, it really integrated for me one day when one of my favorite clients called me and she said, I think I'm going crazy. I can hear so many voices in my head. And I was like, you're not crazy. That's what happens, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And that really did it for me.
Yeah, it is interesting. Do you have a difference between mind chatter and some of this, I call it internal bully, or inner voices. I've learned that there's a big, huge difference from nonstop, endless to-do lists chatter in the mind to internal bullying. What were you thinking? Why were you doing that? Where are you going with that? It's amazing the different voices. That sounds very psycho when you say it like this, but
it's
I'm like,
true.
okay, they were so weird. But when you realize which ones are serving you and which ones actually stop you from growing, you can actually go and put a healthy boundary around it and go, oh, there's my self-sabotage kicking in. That's so cool. That means I need to go there. I have learned that when fear pops up for me, I go there. That's like my, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, that's what we got to do. Usually that's the truth.
Yeah.
I'm like, I really don't want to speak of that. But no, I really got to go. But, I think that's, like really the part that we get stuck on. We don't follow the joy. We like, oh, that's not possible for me because I feel like, I'm not educated or I don't know enough.
Right.
We start those little, sabotage discussions.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is, it's about making decisions. And I love to tell people that decision making is a skill, because when we talk about it like that, it's not like a gift that I either know how to make decisions, really powerful decisions for myself, or I don't. It's a skill. And so if you feel like you're not making the best decisions in terms of your self-care and your joy in your life, then get help with that and learn the skill of making powerful decisions, because you can. Everybody can learn that skill.
Absolutely. And there are defeating thoughts, and sometimes you can't discern between those negative thoughts and something that's actually working for you. And I think it is important to get support to filter that out, have somebody else listen, and somebody who knows how to be neutral about things. I think it's very important to say that we can't necessarily talk to our friends and family sometimes because they're attached to how we look, behave, perform. They're invested in success. You have to really know, where to go for help and where to get support. Because I think it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is a really important conversation. So I'm glad that we had it today.
Yeah, I am too. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you. You have fun today getting all that crazy business assessed.
Thank you.
Line.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
More about it.
It was great to see you too.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.